Today we're going to be solving equations with squares. Now in the previous video we did an easier version of solving equations with squares. However, today we're going to do some more difficult problems. But to start off, let's write down PEMDAS so we know the order in which we are supposed to solve these equations. So PEMDAS, remember it stands for parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. So I'm just going to write those down right here so we can see them a little bit better. And now remember, when we do PEMDAS, we're actually doing it backwards to solve equations. So we're doing PEMDAS backwards. We're going to start with the S, subtraction, work our way to the parentheses. So with that being said, let's start with our first problem. Our first problem, excuse me, is going to be 2x plus 7 squared plus 5 equals 21. Now notice you always have something and it's equal to a number. What we first want to do, start with the right side of PEMDAS. We're going to look at subtraction and addition. Do we see any subtraction and addition? Yeah, we see it right here, the plus 5. Notice we're not talking about the plus 7 because that's inside the parentheses, and parentheses is way over here. So when we talk about the plus 5, to get rid of the plus 5, we do the opposite. Undo it, we do the opposite of what it is. So opposite of addition, subtraction. So we subtract 5 to each side. So now on the left side of the equation, we have 2x plus 7 squared equals, and this will be 15. Excuse me, 16. All right. Now, we continue with PEMDAS. We just did addition and subtraction, now we move to multiply and divide and division. Do we see any multiply and dividing? Yeah, we see it right in here in between the 2 and the parentheses. So we're going to take the whole left side divided by 2 and the whole right side divided by 2. That makes the left side become x plus 7 quantity squared equals 16 divided by 2, 8. Right. Next we go to exponents. Yeah, we see an exponent right here, the square. So to get rid of it, we square root it. Square root each side. So we're left with x plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 8. Remember, we're talking about plus and minus because you can have two roots. And we talked about y in the last video. If you want to review that, go back to the last video. And the last thing, we now do what we have in the in the parentheses, or starting back over at the right side of PEMDAS, addition and subtraction. So we subtract the 7, doing the opposite of addition. So x equals plus or minus square root of 8 minus 7. And we'll leave it in that answer. We don't want to mess with square roots too much. But there is one thing we can still do. The square root of 8, we can actually simplify that a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw an arrow up here, and we're going to simplify this answer. So recall it was x equals plus or minus the square root of 8 minus 7. So what does the square root of 8 simplify to? Well, we can break it into the square root of 4 and the square root of 2. Notice I kept the plus or minus, and also the minus 7 is still there. So this square root of 8 split into square root of 4 and square root of 2. We know what the square root of 4 is. Square root of 4, that's simply 2. And we still have the square root of 2, and we still have the minus 7. This answer right here, that's perfectly fine. Leave it like that. That's all we need. So plus or minus 2 square roots of 2 minus 7. Is our answer for the original problem up here. All right, let's do another example. All right. So let's do 3 parentheses x minus 2 squared plus 10 equals 37. All right, our original problem right here. Start with PEMDAS backwards. That means we're looking for addition and subtraction. we see addition with the plus 10. So to get rid of addition, we do the opposite, subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 10 from each side. So we have 3x minus 2, quantity squared, equals 37 minus 10 is 27. Notice that I didn't touch this minus 2 inside. That's because it's in the parentheses, and that's the very last thing we'll do. All right? So now we move into multiplication and division. Do we see any multiplication or division in this problem? Yeah, we do. We see it right here with the 3 being multiplied to the quantity x minus 2 squared. So we divide. Opposite of multiplication, division. So we divide each side by 3. So on the left, we're left with x minus 2 squared equals, and that would be 9 on this side. All right, moving into the exponent part of PEMDAS, we have a square to undo the square root it. Square root both sides, so we're left with x minus 2 equals, remember your plus or minus, square root of 9. All right, and lastly, you have to deal with that minus 2. To deal with that, we add it to the other side, opposite of subtraction, addition, so plus 2 each side. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 2. Now, we have our answer right here. However, can you simplify the radical in this problem? Actually, it's pretty simple. Square root of 9, that's 3. So I'm going to draw my arrow up here. I'm going to rewrite my problem. X equals plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 2. The square root of 9 simplifies to simply 3. So I have my plus or minus 3 plus 2. Now the way that you should write this answer is to actually calculate these two different solutions out. So that means you should have x plus, let me erase this plus sign real quick. You should have x equals plus 3 plus 2. And your second solution should be x minus 3 plus 2. Now solve both of these. So 3 plus 2, that is 5. And then go over here and solve this solution. Negative 3 plus 2, that's negative 1. So your two solutions are x equals 5 and x equals negative 1. When you're given a problem like this, where you have a plus and minus, a number, plus something else, actually calculate those out using these two methods. Don't leave it in this square root form. If it's in a square root form after you reduce it all the way, then, like our first problem, leave it. However, since it's an actual number, 9 was a perfect square, then we split it into these two solutions and solve them for actual values. All right, so we're going to do one last example. Okay, ouch, shock. Last example. Let us take 4x minus 3 squared equals 2,560. All right, so let's look at PEMDAS backwards. Do we see any addition and subtraction? Well, we do, but we see it inside the parentheses. So parentheses is last, so we won't touch this. Next, multiply and divide. Do you see any multiplication and division? Yeah, we see it right here. The 4 times this whole quantity. So, since it's being multiplied, to undo it, we divide. So divide the left side by 4, divide the right side by 4. And when you do this on your calculators, you'll have your left side be x minus 3 squared, and on the right side you'll have 640. Then we look at exponents. Do we have any? Yeah, we have this quantity squared, so we're going to square root it to undo it. Alright, so we're left with x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 640. Alright, and lastly, We see the minus 3 right there. To undo that, we add it to the other side. So we have x equals plus or minus the square root 640 plus 3. All right, so now we're down, so that's only x equals, which we want. However, let's check and make sure that this radical is in simplest form. All right, and what I know already is that this radical, we can take out as 64. So what I'm going to do, circle it, let's go up here and rewrite the problem. Square root of 640 plus 3. So how can we break up that radical? Well, we can break it up into the square root of 64 and the square root of 10. 64 times 10 equals 640. That's how I can do that. Next, notice first that I kept the plus and minus and also the plus 3 at the end. I just brought those down. So now, our next step, let's simplify our radicals even more if we can. Well, the square root of 64, we could break that into the square root of 8 and the square root of 8, or you could realize that's a perfect square and it's just going to be 8. So square root of 64 is 8. And now, square root of 10, we could break that into the square root of 5 and the square root of 2, but we don't have any matches. So we're just going to leave it as the square root of 10. And that plus 3 just gets tacked on to the end. It stays there. Notice that in this problem we have a square root. So we're going to leave this as the answer. Since it's not all numbers, we just leave it as the answer. If it is all numbers, like our example number 2 in this video, you're actually going to break it into its 2 solutions. But since this only has radicals, we're going to leave it. So our solutions, x equals plus or minus 8 square roots of 10 plus 3. That's all there is to it.